U.S. realities.
The American president is supposed to control the economy, right? So why is it that presidents change but inflation stays the same, housing prices go up, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Maybe the real power lies elsewhere. Today, I will tell you about a triangle that even the White House cannot control: the Fed, BlackRock, and Wall Street. These three structures determine not only the American economy, but also the global distribution of wealth, crisis, and growth. Where are the real decisions made? Now, if you are ready, let's pull back the curtain. What is the Fed? The Federal Reserve looks like the central bank of the United States. But it is actually an organization of private banks, independent of the government. It was founded in 1913 and controls the supply of US dollars. In other words, how much money will be put on the market? Will interest rates fall? Will the economy contract? These decisions are made not by elected officials, but by appointed technocrats. And these decisions affect not only the market, but also stock market crashes, the lives of millions of people, and even wars. BlackRock is more than an investment firm. It's a financial giant that manages nearly $10 trillion. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Pfizer. It owns stakes in almost all of them. But what makes it truly unique? Aladdin, an AI-powered investment analysis system. It analyzes around 250,000 financial assets a day, calculates risk, and recommends positions. So it doesn't just invest, it keeps its finger on the pulse of the market. When the market crash began in 2020 with the pandemic, the US government consulted BlackRock. Together with the Fed, it launched a bond buying program. In other words, it was the Fed that printed the money and BlackRock that guided the market. But the strange thing was that the people making the decisions were neither elected nor accountable to the public. The system is called free market, but the players are limited. And BlackRock is often the strategist behind the curtain. Wall Street is not just a street. It is the system itself. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Morgan Stanley. These giant financial institutions do not just make money. They play an influential role in writing laws and making political decisions. In the US, billions of dollars are donated to politics by these companies every election cycle. But these donations are not free. After the elections come the rewards: tax cuts, bailouts, new regulations. In the 2008 crisis, while millions lost their homes and jobs, these companies handed out billions of dollars in bonuses. In 2020, the same thing happened again in the pandemic. Small businesses closed down, but big banks grew. Wall Street generates power, not just money. And this power eventually overrides democracies, because those who write the rules are not subject to them. Now you will say, okay, they are all powerful, but they're different institutions, right? Well, no. The Fed, BlackRock, and Wall Street, although they may look separate from the outside, they are actually part of an intertwined web of power. To understand this relationship, you need to know the concept of the revolving door system. In this system, people start in the private sector, i.e. Wall Street. Then they are appointed to the public sector, i.e. the state. Then they return to the private sector. And these transitions are no coincidence. It is a strategic circulation. William Dudley. He was president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York from 2009 to 2018. In other words, he ran the most powerful branch of the US Federal Reserve Bank. So where was he before that? He was chief economist at Goldman Sachs. In other words, he both wrote the theory and put it into practice. Stephen Friedman. He served as chairman of the New York Federal Reserve Board in 2008. However, before that, he was the CEO of Goldman Sachs. In other words, the person who influenced the central bank's decisions was once the top executive of a global investment bank. Henry Paulson served as U.S. Secretary of the Treasury from 2006 to 2009. He was one of the key actors who intervened in the market during the 2008 crisis. So, who was he before that role? he was the CEO of Goldman Sachs. In other words, the person who sets the rules of the system was in the private sector one day and the public sector the next. This chain is not limited to Wall Street and the Fed. BlackRock is also part of this network. Brian Deese was the global sustainability president at BlackRock. He later became director of the National Economic Council under the Biden administration. This is one of the most powerful economic positions in the White House. Wally Adeyemo served as an advisor at BlackRock before being appointed Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. In other words, they moved from decision-making positions in private companies to positions directly managing the state treasury. These examples are not just a few names. The system itself is set up this way. The people who write the rules, enforce them, and monitor them all come from the same elite circle. This blurs the boundaries between the people and the government. The state is supposed to be independent of capital, but the state and capital are mixed together. And this is not only happening in the US. BlackRock also has contracts with the European Central Bank. Wall Street influence is not limited to New York. It extends from London to Frankfurt, from Tokyo to Istanbul, because finance is a global network. And the shadow of this triangle, the Fed, BlackRock, and Wall Street, falls over the world economy. Now that we have seen this whole structure, let us ask, where are we? That is, the people. Voters, workers, small business owners, students, retirees, the vast majority left outside the system? For us, elections are part of democracy. But under the shadow of this triangle, election results may be nothing more than a facade. Because the leaders the people elect operate within the boundaries set by these structures. The Federal Reserve makes an interest rate decision, and the markets are shaken. BlackRock adjusts a few major positions, and the dollar suddenly gains value. A report from Wall Street is released. The media stokes fear, and investors flee. So an invisible yet powerful hand constantly guides the direction. And all these developments directly impact our lives. One morning you wake up, and bread is 3 lira more expensive. Rents rise, and your credit card debt grows. You have to take out a loan for your child's education. But no one consulted you when these decisions were made. The system operates from the top down. You work, you pay taxes, you vote, but you are not the one guiding the direction. And in the end, the same question echoes in your mind. Rotations. Do we really have a say in this system? Or are we just spectators? Perhaps the only question we should be asking now is, not who will be president, but who is the real boss? Don't be surprised if one day you see BlackRock's name on the ballot. Or if you hear about a decision made by artificial intelligence that shapes the economy, it may not just be technology. It could be a systemic choice. Because we must look not only at the events themselves, but also at the structure that gives rise to them. Without understanding the system, we cannot grasp the problem. If what you heard in this video has sparked new questions for you, I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments.
If you like it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more, because we'll keep talking about the realities behind the scenes.